Good morning and welcome to Inquisition Update on this beautiful Iowa day. My name's Tom Fress. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. My pleasure to be here this morning, and as many are expecting, we will continue our reading and discussion of the book The Papacy and the Civil Power by R.W. Thompson. Remember, yesterday we enumerated several of the canons in the Roman Catholic canon law. Extraordinary laws of the church, blasphemous and ludicrous, to say the least. And my listeners will remember certainly the last one where it says religious books. Now remember, Roman Catholic canon law says religious books, including Bibles, shall not be printed without the consent of the Roman Catholic priesthood, and all such as have not their approbation are forbidden to be read. That's right. The Roman Catholic Church forbids the printing of Bibles and the reading of Bibles unless those Bibles are sanctioned by the priesthood of the Roman Catholic Church. No Bible may be read, no Bible may be printed that doesn't meet with the Roman Catholic Church's approval. And that means your authorized King James Version of the Bible is a criminal book. And Rome is going to find a way to sanction those who read the authorized King James Version of the Bible. That's just common sense deduction. And it says now we're going to talk about the coercive power of the church. We've just enumerated several of these laws of the canons of the canon law, and the Roman Catholic Church asserts by divine right the power to coerce compliance with canon law. And by the word coerce, they mean by force, even if it means putting you to death for noncompliance. This is not a wild assertion. This is all of history. This has been demonstrated throughout history. Rome has never changed in her assertion. We're talking about the decrees of the Fourth Lateran Council that gave the Roman Catholic Church the right to put heretics and the disobedient to death. And it says the coercive power of the church includes the power, quote, to punish the insubordinate and repress the lawless, which extends to any punishment short of shedding blood, such as imprisonment in monasteries and other chastisements. Now, these provisions fall very short of the whole body of the canon law. I want to be clear. We just read a very, very brief number of the canon laws of the Roman Catholic Church, and the author is saying plainly that those that he has presented in this book, it says these provisions fall very, very short of the whole body of the canon law. In other words, the canon law is a huge body of law, okay? And it says, which is set forth in the papal and consular decrees, many of which have been noticed, but they distinctly show the purpose of the hierarchy, the Roman Catholic hierarchy, to be the introduction of the whole into this country gradually, but as rapidly as they can, either by the exercise of direct power or because of the inattention and toleration of the American people. So, the stated intent of the Roman Catholic canon law is to impose the whole canon law, to make the canons of the Roman Catholic Church the law of the land, to do it by any means necessary, as gradually as possible, and by its direct power, if necessary, that is, by force, but gradually, as long as the American people are inattentive and tolerant to these encroaches of our rights and our laws. And I maintain to my listeners that is exactly what's taking place. that Roman Catholic canon law is being imposed in this country gradually and on a very much accelerated basis these last few years because of the inattention and the toleration of American Protestants. Now, all the power that can now control is directed to and concentrated in this subject. In other words, every effort of Roman Catholics in this country, if they are obedient to their church, is focused on that one object. All the concentration of the Roman Catholic Church is focused on imposing Roman Catholic canon law in the country. And it will be observed that one reason assigned for the jurisdiction they seek to establish over this country is that all heretics are subject to the laws of the Church. The Roman Catholic Church believes this is a nation of heretics, where Protestantism has ruled since the very foundation of the country. Remembering that Roman Catholicism started out in the colonial days as an extreme minority, 1% of the population. And now it has grown to a controlling factor in the United States government, and they are imposing Roman Catholic canon law just as fast as they can. And it says, inasmuch as infidels, that is Protestants or non-Catholics, inasmuch as infidels who have always denied the faith, that is Roman Catholicism, are included among the heretics along with the Jews and pagans. Thus, jurisdiction is made so complete and broad as to include the entire population of this country. Not only, therefore, do these hierarchs, these Roman Catholic hierarchs, consider themselves entitled to possess the country and government and to govern it in the name of and by virtue of the divine right of the Pope, but to act as the masters and superiors of all classes of people, only awaiting prudently the opportunity to assert and exercise this high ecclesiastical prerogative. In the meantime, while this tremendous authority is held in abeyance by our civil institutions, the papacy stands ready with its armory full of ecclesiastical weapons prepared for use. If these are somewhat dulled by the length of time that they have lain idle, the dogma of papal infallibility has created a necessity for resharpening and burnishing them up again. Therefore, we find the faithful instructed in the law of the papacy as to the manner in which it would deal with the host of its enemies and persecutors. Thus it is said, infidels, quote, are not to be tolerated. Listen, the Pope is speaking to you. The Pope is speaking to my listeners. Listen to what he says. Thus it is said, infidels are not to be tolerated because they are so bad that no truth or advantage for the good of the church can be thence derived. In other words, you can never benefit the Roman Catholic Church. You are a dyed-in-the-wool heretic. You cannot be converted, and the church must deal with you in the most extreme manner. It says, and they are to be dealt with without trial, without proof, on the ground of being incorrigible and rebellious from the beginning. That's right. You are incorrigible, rebellious from the beginning, and you are to be convicted and killed without a trial and without proof. That is, without representation. It's a summary order for execution, is what this is. And it's been exercised all throughout history. I want my listeners to comprehend this. And it says infidelity, that is infidels, those who do not abide by Roman Catholic canon law, who do not regard the infallibility of the Pope, who do not regard the so-called infallibility of the Roman Catholic Church, those who read the authorized King James Version of the Bible, those who confess their sins directly to God without going to a Roman Catholic priest in a confessional box, those who take communion in the privacy of their own homes, instead of going to the Roman Catholic Church to have the Eucharist served to them by a Roman Catholic priest. It says infidelity, you infidels. It is not to be tried or proved, but extirpated. In other words, annihilated. Subject only to this condition, that this extirpation may be suspended where, quote, there may be reasons which may render it advisable that it should be tolerated, unquote. For example, where the power to extirpate is not possessed. So that's the only exclusion. If we don't have the power to exterminate these heretics, then we must tolerate them for a time. Oh, but only until such time as we have the power to exterminate them, and then we are commanded by Roman Catholic canon law to kill them. Now you hear all this talk about Sharia law and about how we must battle the Muslim hordes so as to never allow Sharia law to become the law of this land. I have to ask you a question. Is there anything in Sharia law that's a greater threat to your life than Roman Catholic canon law? Do you ever get the suspicion that all this hype about Islam, particularly when Muslims only constitute about 1% of the population of this country, the same as constituted the Catholics during the colonial period, 1%? Do you think we should really have all this hubbub about Islam in this country? Now, I'm not suggesting that Islam isn't a threat, but for heaven's sakes, can Sharia law be as bad as Roman Catholic canon law? And it's becoming the law of the land. Roman Catholic canon law is becoming the law of the land. It was the effort of the Roman Catholic Church from the very beginning, from the colonial period, to gradually, without exciting the fears and the defenses of Protestants, to work their way into government, to control the voting booths, to pass legislation in Congress, to get control of the White House, to get control of the Supreme Court. Do you realize for the first time in American history, there's not one Protestant on the Supreme Court? There's not one ecumenical evangelibelly on the Supreme Court. No, there are 6 Roman Catholics, and 4 or 5 of them, they say, are Opus Dei members, and 3 Jews. The Roman Catholic Church has a super majority of Catholics on the Supreme Court, and they are the ones who interpret our Constitution. Now, are they interpreting our Constitution in such a way as to allow the president to become a dictator, a king, and pass presidential directives and executive orders and just autonomously, without consent of Congress or the people, issue a directive to confiscate all the guns from the country? You see what they've done? They're ready to take over the country. They're ready to subject us all to Roman Catholic canon law. They're ready to make us beggars for our very sustenance of life, the very basic necessities of life. They've destroyed the economy. And we've got this health care bill that if you don't belong to the New World Order, you're going to be denied health care. The time has come. Before, they did not have the power to extirpate the heretics, but now they do. They've got control of the government. Now listen to what he says here. He says, heretics as such are to be dealt with under special provisions of the law. made to fit their case on account of their crime and impiety practiced in the act of setting up a false faith in opposition to that of the Roman Catholic Church. Let me read it again. Heretics as such are to be dealt with under special provisions of the law. In other words, there's got to be a set of laws developed to deal with these domestic terrorists, these heretics. Well, I'll bet you never made the link between the word heretic and domestic terrorist, did you? Well, you should. They're not going to make this look like an ecclesiastical attack on Bible-believing Christians. They've got to call it something else. So they simply call you a domestic terrorist. And, of course, the whole nation's been indoctrinated that terror is the great terror of this country. And so anybody labeled a terrorist is instantly condemned without examination by the vast majority of the American people. Nobody ever stops to realize that this is just cover for a religious war that they're waging. They're waging a religious war against the Bible-believing Christians of this country, and they're waging it from Washington, D.C., from your state capital, and from your local municipal government. Heretics as such are to be dealt with under special provisions of the law. Would that be the Patriot Act? Would that be the National Defense Authorization Act? Would that be the suspension of habeas corpus and the suspension of posse comitatus? There you have it right there. You can be arrested and held for an indeterminate period of time and never be tried, and you may be executed. Due process has completely gone out the window. I mean, due process was guaranteed by the Magna Carta. Well, the Pope hates the Magna Carta. We've already been through the history of England. So your basic Magna Carta rights, your basic Bill of Rights, your basic God-given rights are going to be taken away from you because we don't worship God anymore. We worship the Pope. We don't stand up for God in this country. We stand up for the Pope and his laws. And we do it in the name of self-defense and national security. If the American people don't wake up, and I fear it's already too late, there's a day of reckoning coming in this country that is going to rival biblical proportions. Heretics as such are to be dealt with under special provisions of the law. We've seen those laws come to pass right here in this country before our very eyes. R.W. Thompson told us about it back in 1876. 1876. He knew this would happen. Why? Because it's written in Roman Catholic canon law. Heretics as such are to be dealt with under special provisions of the law made to fit their case on account of their crime and impiety practiced in the act of setting up a false faith in opposition to that of Rome. Do you know what that false faith is in opposition to Rome? Biblical Christianity. The faith upon which this nation was founded. So they have to uproot this nation by its foundations in order to install Roman Catholicism. And if you think it can't happen here in the United States, then you've got to explain to me, to my satisfaction, how they made all of Europe Roman Catholic and how they burned at the stake for hundreds and hundreds of years. They burned at the stake anybody who would not profess the Roman Catholic religion. You have to convince me that they've spent the last 1,500 years on this earth imposing Roman Catholic canon law and killing heretics for 1,500 years. You have to explain to me how that can't be a possibility today in Protestant USA. And you can't do it. And denial is no defense. And especially when you can see Rome's hand in everything that happens in this country. R.W. Thompson was well prepared for his job to warn the American people. And his warning went in one ear and out the other. And the Protestants went back to sleep. As a matter of fact, they're even hesitant to call themselves Protestant anymore. They're futurist boobs. And they're ecumenical evangelibellies. They have the name of Christ on their lips, but they don't know him. We've got a whole lot of repenting to do in this country. I've said it before. You walk up to your pastor some Sunday morning and you ask him who Antichrist is, and if he even takes a breath before he answers you, the Pope of Rome, then kick his butt out of the church and put a man of God behind the pulpit. It's your duty. We got too many panty-waist papists behind the pulpits in our churches. Ecumenical evangelibellies. They haven't got two neurons to rub together. Flowery speeches and long, beautiful sermons, but they miss the truth. Teaching you a social gospel and how to take care of the poor and all that. Nothing wrong with that, but the country's going down the tube. Might it be explainable, as R.W. Thompson is explaining it to us 150 years ago? Listen to this. Baptized heretics, that's right, baptized heretics are to be visited with the greater excommunication by the Pope, as in the case of the bull of Pope Pius IX a few years ago, excommunicating all Protestants. Did you get it? If you call yourself a Protestant, you're simply a baptized heretic, according to the Pope. And if you're a baptized heretic, if you're a Protestant, you deserve the greater excommunication. In other words, they're going to turn the thumb screws just a little bit tighter on you. They're going to run you through the waterboard 2 or 3 more times than everybody else. They're going to stretch you a few inches longer than everybody else. And when they come to burn you at the stake, they won't put good kindling on the fire. They'll put green sticks and roast you real slow. You deserve the greater excommunication because you're a baptized heretic, a Bible-believing Protestant. And when we get back from the break, I'm going to tell you what a Protestant is. And it's going to surprise many of you. It's going to surprise most of you. But it's worth sticking around to listen to. This is important information. Come back after the break. We'll talk about it. Inquisition update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. We'll be right back after these messages.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, Don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org. The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Welcome back from the break. You're listening to the second half hour of Inquisition Update on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Inquisition Update is sponsored by First Amendment Radio. So if you like Inquisition Update, please support FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Now we're going to talk about Protestantism. Can any of you define Protestantism? Just raise your hands and I'll pretend I can see you. No, I don't see anybody. Well, I'm going to have to tell you what Protestantism is then. Do you remember when the Israelites were in Egyptian slavery? Oppressed day and night, who fired bricks for Pharaoh, and when they grew too powerful and too many in population, Pharaoh tried to kill them off by taking away their straw and doubled their tally of bricks. How do you build bricks without straw? I mean, if you're a slave Israelite in Egypt, you got to have something to bind the clay with to make a brick. So the bricks broke. They fell apart. They wouldn't hold themselves together. And so not only did they have to make the brick, but they had to cut the straw to make the brick. There was no rest day nor night. There was no Sabbath, a day off. You got to be kidding. And their cry reached unto heaven. And God heard their cry. Why? They protested. And they appealed to God for help. And God heard their cry, and He sent them a deliverer, Moses. And He led them out of Egypt with a mighty hand. But first they protested. Do you realize you're living in Egypt? Do you realize you're governed by Pharaoh in Rome? Do you realize that you can't get a day off because you have to work, both your wife and you, 7 days a week, and the government takes all your money? Are you protesting, or are you a happy slave? And if you're protesting, who are you protesting against? That's the problem. Protestants today don't know who they protest against. Oh, they protest against the liberals, they protest against the Republicans, but they never protest the Pope, who controls both the Democrats and the Republicans. You're wasting your time talking about politics in this country. You realize that, don't you? They've got you all in the game. They've got you fighting for the liberals. They've got you fighting for the Republicans. They got you fighting against the liberals. They got you fighting against the Republicans. So you're so busy fighting ghosts that you're not able to look behind the curtain and see the Pope pulling all the strings in both parties of the House and the Senate. Do you know that every Protestant reformer to a man knew and understood who the biblical Antichrist was? The Pope of Rome. It was unanimous. There was no dissenters. There came a time when somebody, against the law of the Pope, printed a Bible in the language that the people could understand. And for the first time in their lives, they read God's book by themselves. And guess what they found out? That Revelation chapter 17 and 18 describe the papacy so vividly and so unmistakably that they left the Roman Catholic Church by the millions. That Shekinah glory in the Word of God marched them right out of the Roman Catholic Church through the Red Sea into the Promised Land. And they called the true faith of God Protestantism. It was the great deliverer. Spiritual life finally came to God-fearing Catholics. And they became Protestants. They protested the Pope. What this boils down to is, you may call yourself a Protestant, but you can't be a Protestant unless you understand that the Pope is the biblical and historical Antichrist, and that the Roman Catholic Church is the woman, the whore of Revelation chapter 17. You can call yourself a Protestant till hell freezes over, and you won't make the grade unless you understand who the biblical and historical and prophetic Antichrist is. It's none other than the Pope of Rome. There's only been one Antichrist in the world, the dynasty of the popes. And he can't be reformed. So if you don't believe the Pope's the Antichrist, you're going to have to call yourself something else. But I want every one of my listeners to know what it is to be a Protestant. You know, I talk to people on amateur radio whenever I get a chance. And you simply wouldn't believe that in 7 years of nightly discussions on amateur radio with thousands and thousands of people listening, I don't have confirmation that even one of my listeners comprehended or accepted that the papacy is the biblical, historical, and prophetic Antichrist, the one and only. There can be no else, none else. Do you think God would make it so difficult for us to figure out who Antichrist is? I get emails all the time from listeners. Oh, Barack Obama's the Antichrist. This guy down in Mexico is the Antichrist. Somebody from Europe's the Antichrist. Tony Blair was the Antichrist. George W. Bush was the Antichrist. Man, they've got us so confused we couldn't find our fanny with either hand. We forgot our Protestant heritage. They were unanimous. The Protestant reformers were unanimous. We're as divided as a house of cards. And now we're going to pay. You owe it to yourself, your children, and your grandchildren. You owe it to your family members to raise the roof of your church until you can find a pastor who has the spiritual fortitude to stand not only before his congregation but the entire community and proclaim the papacy to be Antichrist, and we willing to lay his life down if need be, because the ecumenical unity with the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church is a spiritual suicide. R.W. Thompson says heretics, according to the Roman Catholic Church, are to be dealt with under special provisions of the law made to fit their case on account of their crime and impiety practiced in the act of setting up a false faith in opposition to that of Rome. Do you know Protestant Church? The Protestant Church, the real Protestant Church, was set up in opposition to the Church of Rome. Nobody equivocated about it. Yes, they were for Christ. He empowered them. But they were against Antichrist, just as Christ is. Shouldn't we be like them? Shouldn't we be like the Protestant reformers? Shouldn't we be like the Hussites that we've talked about? Shouldn't we be like the Albigensians that we talked about? How about the Vaudois? How about the Waldenses? How about the first century Christians who were fed to the lions? Are we so wrapped up in preserving our own lives that we would allow ourselves to be slaves to Antichrist and allow everyone else to be ignorant of who Antichrist is? Is Protestantism dead in this country? There's going to be special provisions of the law provided for us because we stand in opposition to the Antichrist church in Rome. And we ought to protest to the throne of Almighty God that He might send us a deliverer and a Shekinah glory. Unlike many of my listeners on amateur radio and on Inquisition Update, I'm not going to be quiet to save my own life. I'm not going to be so politically correct as to fear being called an anti-Roman Catholic bigot, and I'll tell you why. Because I see Protestants in this country being so hell-bent on uniting with the Roman Catholic Church, I place my reliance on Catholics now. It was always Catholics who rebelled against the papacy. They served that church until their fingers bled and they realized the Pope's not infallible. The church is not infallible. The councils aren't infallible. And we're not going to listen to them anymore. And we're going to be talking about this directly. He says, baptized heretics are to be visited with a greater excommunication by the Pope, as in the case of the bull of Pope Pius IX a few years ago, 1864, excommunicating all heretics. Did you know that the infallible Pope of Rome, Pope Pius IX, excommunicated all heretics, all Protestants? I mean, the words are synonymous. You've been excommunicated from the Roman Catholic Church. I celebrate that, but not without realizing what Rome fully intends to do to me. He says they are to be considered as infamous, and their temporal goods are to be confiscated. Have you lost your house? Are you one of my listeners that have just lost your house? How about everything else? Did you lose everything else? You're going to, and we're all going to lose everything we own. You ever hear of the universal destination of goods? You ever hear of the papal encyclical Caritas in Veritate? Charity and truth? The Pope's going to make us all charitable. We're going to give up everything we've got. Because the Pope's declared himself the Robin Hood of the world, and he's got to redistribute all the wealth of the world. You rich, fat, happy Protestants have dined on affluence and wealth long enough. It's time for me to step in as the Pope of Rome and give to the poor. And I'm going to take from you and give it to the poor. No longer is Protestantism going to be the bright, shining light on the hill. Your power and affluence are going to be stripped from you. You made an ecumenical agreement with me. You put yourselves under my authority now. I have the right, the divine right, to redistribute your wealth and to destroy your Protestantism and every benefit that has ever brought you, including the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. How do you like to be a slave under the Roman Pharaoh? Is this making sense to any of my listeners, or am I just talking to thin air? Protestants are to be subjected to corporal punishment, to exile, and to imprisonment. And then to complete the work, in case they shall remain obstinate and not heed the warnings of the Roman Catholic Church, they are to be dealt with as John Huss and Jerome were under a decree of the Council of Constance, that is, they shall suffer death. Do you think I'm being a little bit melodramatic? Oh, Tom's working on ratings. He's really getting riled up today. Ratings don't have a thing to do with it. I've got 6 listeners, tops, and I'm not here to be famous or popular or a star. I'm here to just tell you the truth. Take it or leave it. If you remain obstinate when Rome puts the law down on you, the Roman Catholic canon law on you, and you don't obey, they're going to do to you like they did John Huss and Jerome of Prague. They're going to burn you at the stake. You shall suffer death. He said, let not the Protestant reader be alarmed. This is only the law of the papacy, which the infallible Pope with his hierarchical auxiliaries is trying to enforce here in the United States, and which would be enforced all over the world if it could carry them back into the gloom and superstition of the Middle Ages. See, however, the emphatic and plain language in which this death penalty is recorded in question and answer. Quote, are heretics rightly punished with death? St. Thomas Aquinas says, yes, because forgers of money or other disturbers of the state are justly punished with death. Therefore also heretics who are forgers of the faith and experience being the witness grievously disturb the state. You're a domestic terrorist. You're a spiritual forger. You have subscribed to a religion that is contrary to the papacy. And you're going to be treated like a forger. You're going to get the death sentence. And don't look for a rapture to deliver you. No, the resurrection comes after the tribulation of those days. The sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. Your resurrection doesn't come until after the tribulation. R.W. Thompson is plainly telling you what you can expect to happen in the United States if Protestants fall asleep. And we have fallen asleep. It must not be supposed that the baptized heretics who are thus to be dealt with are only those who have been baptized into the Roman Catholic Church. No. The class is much larger and includes all baptized Protestants as well, provided the ceremony has been performed with reference to the ordinary essentials, in other words, water. If you've been baptized in water, you come under the jurisdiction of the Roman Catholic Church. I don't care what church you go to. Is what he's saying. These are not required to be baptized upon reception into the Roman Catholic Church. No, you don't have to be rebaptized when they make you Catholic. You're Catholic already, according to Rome. He says, these are not required to be rebaptized upon reception into the Roman Catholic Church and are therefore proper subjects of excommunication and punishment. The Pope says he's got every right to put you to death because you're a Protestant. You're still part of the Roman Catholic Church because you've been baptized in water. Remember, I told my listeners some months ago that Rome has an exclusive claim to baptism. It's a sacrament in the Roman Catholic Church. It's called an ordinance in the Protestant churches. That's what makes them heretics, see? They don't understand that when they're baptized in water, the Pope claims them as his property to do with as he pleases, just like a father pleases to do to his son. It says, since the time of St. Augustine more than 14 centuries ago, the doctrine on this subject has been as laid down by him as follows, quote, for in all points in which they, that is the heretics, the Protestants, for in all points in which they think with us, that is the Roman Catholic Church, they are also in communion with us, are severed from us only in those points in which they dissent from us. What they have retained of the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church, they do not lose by severance from the Roman Catholic Church. Hence, the power of conferring baptism may be found outside the Roman Catholic Church. Moreover, it is Christ himself who baptizes. Amen. That's one thing he said that's correct. He said the grace of the sacrament is wholly independent of the qualifications of him who administers it. Unquote. Why? Because Rome claims exclusive ownership of baptism. Anyone who's been baptized of water comes under the jurisdiction of the Pope. And he can do whatever he wants with you. Thus it is manifest that all Protestants who have been baptized are held to be in communion with the Roman Catholic Church for the purpose of punishment for the crime of heresy, and consequently they are now, in the papal view, under sentence of death, the executioner merely waiting for sufficient power to enforce the decree which has stood unrevoked and unchanged since the Lateran Council of Innocent III provided for the extermination of the Albigenses. Founded upon this enlarged and extraordinary jurisdiction and the subtle reasoning employed to maintain it, the law of the Roman Catholic Church distinctly lays down the power of the Pope to compel, by force, obedience from us all, from the millions of Protestant people in the United States who have vainly supposed themselves to be outside of the Pope's jurisdiction. It says, quote, baptized infidels such as heretics and apostates usually are, also baptized schismatics may be compelled, may be forced, even by corporal punishment, to return to the Catholic faith and the unity of the Church. Does ecumenism still sound like a good idea? Do you know what this is? This is the reabsorption of the Protestants voluntarily. That's what ecumenism is. And when all the churches have voluntarily followed the yellow brick road back to Rome, then those who are lagging behind, those who simply refuse, and those who still call the Pope the biblical and historical Antichrist will be summarily exterminated. The reason is because these by baptism have become subject to the Roman Catholic Church, and therefore the Roman Catholic Church has jurisdiction over them and the power of compelling them through appointed means to obedience and to fulfill the obligations contracted in baptism. Did you know that Rome regards your baptism as a contract with the Roman Catholic Church? Well, you say, well, I didn't make a contract with the Roman Catholic Church. The Pope doesn't care what you think. You're not supposed to think, remember? When you're in the Roman Catholic Church, you check your brain, your Bible, and your coat at the door. You come in and you do as you're told and believe as you're told. They don't care what you think. They're going to take possession of you because you've signed a contract with them, according to them. And they've got the power. They've got the power of the government. They've got the power of the state. They've got the power of the county government, the local government, the police force in your town. They've got they've got control of the government, the militaries, the paramilitaries, the jackbooted thugs, the drones that are flying over the head. They've got control of the cameras, taking pictures of everything you do every day. They've got control of your computer. They can key log every stroke that you make on your keyboard because you've been baptized in water. You're under their jurisdiction. There's no such thing as freedom. There's no such thing as Protestant liberty. The Pope is the biblical and historical Antichrist. And he's going to compel every man, woman, and child in this country to obey him. And the government's going to enforce it. And is enforcing it. And preparing for your extermination. It's not a joke. Now, just because you don't hear about it on the Alex Jones Show doesn't mean it isn't true. Just because you don't hear it on the Alex Jones Show and some of the other entertainment shows doesn't mean it isn't true. We're talking about Roman Catholic canon law. It's been in existence for 1,500 years. Do you think Rome's just going to forget 1,500 years of diligent work designed to make you a slave to Antichrist? The Pope's not going away, and he can't be reformed, and it's time for you to realize who the biblical, historical, and prophetic Antichrist is, and tell everybody you know. I'll see you next week.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.